Good morning. Welcome to Meet the Masters of Insurance webinar series. I'm Lawrence Geller, the founder of ForAdvisorsOnly.com. This is the 42nd of what we expect to be a great many webinars with Canadians who've dedicated their careers to learning the art and science of insurance sales and service. Webinars in this series are now scheduled through March of next year, and more are being added to the schedule daily. Over the years, I've observed that every successful insurance agent who I've met has succeeded differently, even if they're in the same field. They deal with the similar clients, and even if they are related or in business together. That's what makes the sale and servicing of insurance one of the best careers that I can imagine. It's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. With this webinar series, we intend to prove that any type of person can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work. Our goal is to create a video record for each of these masters of insurance so that some of their expertise and experience will be available to those who'd like to learn from. Today, we have Mr. Paul Williamson with us. When I think of Paul Williamson, the first thing I think of is that he's known as Mr. Double Up. Paul is an expert fundraiser, and in the Brantford community, he is extremely well known and well respected. In fact, Paul was the first civilian to be named honorary colonel for the 56th Field Regiment of the Royal Canadian Artillery in Brantford. He's been involved with Laurier's Brantford campus since it opened in 1999, and he's supported many of their efforts to revitalize the Brantford downtown core. Paul has been extremely generous, both individually and in his role with the Williamson Group. The Williamson Group in Brantford, Ontario specialized in investments, financial planning, and employee benefits. Paul has now retired from the group and is still maintaining a consulting practice. He was exposed at a very early age to fundraising and the need for charitability. In fact, Paul's father, Donald, was the first chairman of Brantford's United Way charity. Paul is actually an expert in the broad concept. He is an expert in asking simple questions to get people to talk with him. And he's found that in doing so, he learns a great deal about people. Today, Paul will be interviewed by Paul Bourbonnier. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning.
Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. And actually, thank you for those comments, both worthy introduction to you, Paul Williamson, but also to tee up some of the things that we need to talk about. And I guess let's start at the beginning. A few years ago, shall we say, Paul, but what prompted you to get involved with the insurance business? How did you get started? And let's start with that.
Well, for people that know me, I suggest strongly that you pay attention early because I start off slow and then I taper off from there. So anyway, okay, let's go backwards. I'm 29 years old. I'm working for an international accounting firm in Toronto. I'm a second-year manager of a division. And I had the second highest chargeable ratio in Canada. And all that tells you is I was a workaholic. And so one day I had a first-class insurance agent come in to try to get me to contemplate buying life insurance. And he asked me all the traditional fact-finding questions, but he asked me three questions I particularly remember. He said, "What are your short-term goals?" I said, "Make money." He said, "What are your medium-term goals?" I reflected, "Make money." So what are your long-term goals? I break into a sweat and I say, "Make money?" Honest to God, truth, I went home that night. I lived on Toronto Island. Had a little shack right on the waterfront, and I do mean shack. I bought the house in 1968 for $1,950. And the reason it was so expensive, it was furnished. You had to see it. So anyway, that's where my wife and I were living. we had a son, 2, Don, and another son, 1, Duff. So I went home and told her about my discussion with this insurance agent. She said, well, what do you think of your answers? I said, they're the wrong answers. She said, what are you going to do about it? So I went in and I resigned the next day. I didn't even look for a job. I just resigned because those were the wrong answers. So that was how we arranged the exit. And then we lived in Brantford. So a weekend or two later, we went back to Brantford. I bumped into a friend of my brother's who was a bit younger, and he was a junior partner in Brantford's largest general insurance agency. So I said, hey, Frank, what's going on in town? And Frank said, Paul, you know, it's 1972 at Brantford, nothing's going on, but we need an $8,000 a year life insurance salesman. And I said, I don't know anything about life insurance, but $8,000 is a wrong number. So anyway, they wanted to start a little life insurance practice. So that's how I got my feet wet. Yeah. And then, so now I'm doing that, and I'm just basically dealing with a lot of blue collar, white collar. And then after 4 years of doing that, I had an amicable split with them. I wanted to go on my own and start my own practice. So that worked well. I would refer general insurance stuff to them. They would refer to me. But the lightning bolt came, and I kind of got tired of getting up too early in the morning and working late at night, seeing people after hours. So in 1977, in my 5th year, my first year in practice by myself, I said, okay, I'm going to get into the business insurance marketplace. So I arranged for the following Monday. I was in 1 week. For the next week, on a Monday, I set up an appointment with 3 prominent business firms and owners in town. And then I went to a conference, an insurance conference, to learn how to talk to these people. So I was there 3 days, and on the last day, I haven't got any pearls of wisdom as to how to deal with these people in the business insurance marketplace. So I went and asked the instructor, Don Pooley, to say, I got these business appointments. I say, what do I do? How do I handle them? And what he told me was available information for those that would take the time to find it. But he said, ask 3 short questions. And being, for example, as a business owner, how's business? And shut up. And no matter what they say, you answer with another short question. It's great. Why? It's lousy. Why? And it tumbles from there. After they're exhausted telling you about how it is today, I say, well, how did you ever get into this business? And whether you're just a salaried employee or a business owner, it's still the magic. People want to share with you who they are and where they came from. So that's the question. How did you ever get into this? Or how did you ever get into this job? And then the last question is, where do you go from here? And again, it's a question after question. And sometimes they would say, why are you asking so many questions? And I say, well, if I don't know who you are and what you're doing and where you're going, I won't be able to make recommendations ideally suited for you. So anyway, on that Monday, I went to those appointments armed with Don Pooley's magic 3 questions. And the truth is that those 3 questions made me a multi-millionaire from the insurance world. And it's, of course, and it's not that complicated to do that. I just want to tell you that. So I went home at the end of the day, and Margot said, how did it go? I said, I'm exhausted. She said, why? I said, they never shut up. They never shut up. They never shut up. And I'm sure my head rang. And the interviews went for like 2 hours. 1.5 to 2.5 hours. And the last one was the best. There was 2 Italian gentlemen who had a shoe chain of 600 employees, headquartered out of Brantford, and after we had our chat, and they're showing me to the door, they said, one of them said, "I can't believe it." I said, "What can't you believe?" He said, "We always throw insurance agents out. So I suggest you try 3 questions and learn everything about everybody."
Paul, that's interesting about that concept because, for some of the people that'll be watching this now and in the future, very similar to your circumstances. They're in a particular market, but they want to upgrade the market. They want to get into the business insurance. And so it's as simple as you say, 3 short questions, obviously book sufficient time. You're not going to have quickie little 1-hour interviews with these people. If you've got a couple of them back to back, you want to give lots of time for them to express themselves. And now, just out of curiosity, ultimately, how did you do with those 3 in terms of actual insurance sales?
They all became clients in short order. And after they bought individual insurance, I'd be shooting the breeze with them. They say, "Well, you do employee benefits?" "Oh, sure." Well, I said, "Why don't you take a look at our plan?" And then later on, "Hey, you handle investments?" So all I did was make messes, okay, by opening up opportunities, and then you hire the executioners to do the job well. And that's many hands, light work. That's how you succeed.
So your early comment about, I guess it was your friend who was saying that, Brantford in 1972 was a pretty sleepy town. Just people, once again, watching this video will be from all corners of the country, some large cities, some small centers. How important is the physical environment, the locale, whether it's a small town or a large town? I mean, what would you say were, first of all, for those who don't know about Brantford, the approximate size of it, the type of industry, and probably more importantly, what did the Brantford of 1972 and say the Brantford of 2022, how has Brantford evolved, and how has your business reflected that evolution? How much of it is the environment, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
I think it's really the individual, because I think there's a standard of uniformity, city by city by city by city. Some are having more financial, economic inconveniences, but there are always successful businesses. So doesn't matter if it's Brantford or Hamilton or Thunder Bay, it just doesn't matter at all. And
Yeah.
Toronto, all Toronto is composed of 25 cities the size of Brantford. So, it's there's no reason not to succeed at all from any small community. Yeah, anyway, I feel strongly about that.
Super. Now you had a background you're from Brantford, and so and your dad was involved with the charitable activities. So, from a community involvement. So aside from the business, we'll get back to the business in a few minutes. But you're in a community. You're getting to know the business community. Obviously, perhaps some of them you've known them for years and years, but now you're getting to know them as clients. But to what extent do you think that it's wise to get involved with the charitable aspect of getting involved in the community? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about some of the activities that you have been involved with, and is that giving back, or is that in fact a key to your success, community involvement?
You have to do it for the right reasons, because you want to make something better. And
Okay.
any organization you join, if the other participants can see that's why you're there, is to make something better, it's amazing how they become prospects in not long far away. So there's too many. I was in a multitude of things, but the primary one that gave me the most satisfaction was I joined a Rotary Club. Now there's other great clubs, Lions clubs, Shriners clubs, Kiwanis clubs. There's a big difference in being involved in a community-based service organization as compared to being on a board of directors. And I strongly recommend and not only that, it's a prospect base as well. It just happens to be, if you're out to do something good for the community, like in Rotary's motto is service above self. Well,
Right.
in the insurance industry, that should be our motto, isn't it? Service above self. And so the two are compatible. It's easy to do good. Uh, it's just not hard. Yeah, and I couldn't recommend that strongly enough.
Now, do you do it obviously on a personal level, but we'll get into, well, actually, let's take a look at the team. So you start off your, if you will, a lone wolf. You attend these conferences. By the way, of course, having Don Pooley being the professor, if you will, the instructor of that conference, I guess you didn't at the time realize how fortunate you were dealing with one of the really greats in the life insurance business, and not great from although I'm sure he's very strong technically, but it's that broad, what they call the broad concept, as you say, those three questions. So there you are, you have your 3 good meetings. At what point do you start to add staff or build out your team? What does that look like, and what prompts each step along the way of your team growth?
Okay, I'll circumvent and go around that, Orange. Number one, read a good book. Okay, so in 1977, I read a little tiny bathroom reader called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, I probably only read one in my life, and it just happened to be that one. And what it said was, set a goal, write yourself a little one-page note, may only be one paragraph, say, what is your goal for next year?
Yeah.
So read it, I put it away. And then a year later, at Christmas time, I actually coincidentally came across it. And so I said, well, let's see how we did. So I took a look at my last year's production, and a year later, I was up 50%. What I didn't tell you was that when I wrote my one paragraph summary, I said I want my income to double in 1 year. So I went from 50 to 75,000, and I said, oh, okay, I'm not up by double, but I'm up 50%. And the next year, 1980, I did 100,000. Not that it's relevant, it's just it's double. Okay.
Yeah.
So then okay, so then the next year, I doubled it again in 1 year. And we're getting to your point about when you need help. So I doubled in 1 year. And one of the reasons is because I took another piece of learning that was well established as being still totally valuable to this day, and the modified Granum system. So what I did starting in April of 1981, I wrote down on a sheet of paper, DRA. Dialings. How many dialings did I make of the phone? Not how many people I speak to, how many dialings. How many people are for reached, how many appointments. And so I started that, and I made a commitment to do 25 dialings a day. And quite frankly, even if the first 3 I got no answer, I still smiled because I got my 3 marks. I got my 3 Ds. So it's a law of large numbers. Okay, and like you say, ethics and work. So when I doubled in 1 year, that created, I needed staff. So that's how I then hired somebody to do employee benefits. But mainly, I sold life insurance. And I want to get back to that. I didn't join the insurance industry as an evangelist, but I can say in 100% satisfaction years later, we make a difference. We make a giant difference. We help people when they need being helped. That there are crises in life, and if we can deliver the cash at a time of crisis, what can be more fulfilling than that? So it's just what a feel good thing with what you're doing.
Yeah. So you're growing and doubling and doubling again, and so at some point you start to expand your team.
Yeah, and again, but I say I'm an unconscious competent. So in other words, I really don't know what's going on, but somehow I come up with a little bit of magic, and it's because I use the 6 Ps. I didn't mention the 6 Ps that are guiding lights for me. And I didn't come up with this until just a few years ago as to what really drove me. And I call it the 6 Ps. One, you got to have a purpose. Well, okay, that's helping people. And by helping people, you're helping yourself economically. So you got to have a purpose. Number 2, you got to be passionate about that. Lackadaisical doesn't work. You don't have enthusiasm, try another job. So be passionate about what you do. And then you get to 2 of the biggest nuts, in my opinion. Persistence. Persistence. And followed right behind it by patience. Because what you're doing is you're paving a road all the time. That's what you're doing with each phone call, each contact. You're paving a road, and it takes time. So persistence and patience, because good things happen to people who are persistent. And then it helps if you're P number 5, doesn't hurt if you're pleasant. Okay? So you can be pleasant. And then the last one is procrastinate not. Now, ironically, I'm a procrastinator. And when I came up with that phone contact system to drive me to make dialings, we came up with it in mid-April. And my secretary, or whatever, or executive director, whatever you call whoever runs me.
Yeah.
And I said, so what do you want to get this going? I said, well, July 1 would be nice. She said, no, we're starting today. So procrastinate not. Now I will tell you that when I started that, in 6 weeks, I averaged 10 sales a week for 60 sales in 6 weeks. Just from the activity. And then, of course, and I also kept track of my phone calls that year, the number of dialings. I think I had around 1,700 dialings because I started in April. Mm-hmm. In the next year, I only did 1,100 dialings. Well, and what do you think happened? I had 250 sales when I did the 1,700. And then as soon as you drop 40% in phone calls, you do 100 sales dropped off down to 150. So the whole point is the more that you're dialing for dollars and having fun doing it.
And of course, for those of us under 40 that are listening to the broadcast, the dialing is the old way of using the telephone to reach out to people. Yeah. As opposed to speed dials, or well, we even call it speed dialing, but hitting a few buttons or asking the machine to do some calls for you. So it's whatever terminology, but often you'll hear advisors talking about getting to the point where you grow strictly on referrals. Now, it sounds like, at least in the early days, as you say, it was very much a numbers game. You just had to have the discipline to reach out to X number of people, which would result in actual contacts, which would result in meetings and finally sales. Later on, let's say this side of the year 2000, when you're really successful, a large company, is the business still coming as a result of cold calling, or is there a evolution to where referrals become the primary source?
Yeah, no, I think the key is if you deliver fabulous service to the people you're taking care of, not only do they buy more, not only do their families buy more, but they refer you more. And it's just by taking care of them. Yes, you should be able to get all kinds of referrals from that good work, period. Anyway, you made me terribly smile when I talked about dialings. I mean, can you guys, if you're looking at me, that's not Williamson you're looking at a dinosaur. Hi there, a talking dinosaur. Anyway, yeah, you guys translate it to current things. I just discovered what a computer was last week. We'll go from there.
it's a passing fad, Paul. Don't worry about it. You're safe without having to use one. So, but I'm gonna keep getting back to how you physically built out your business, because I think there's a lot of people early on in their careers, or we're at this stage where they feel they're the only person who can do 18 different chores, as opposed to the one important chore, which is sitting in front of a wealthy business owner or individual who has some financial problems. So when did you start adding people to the team? When did the Williamson idea become the Williamson Group?
I'd probably say, but I had 5 employees after 5 years, and then we doubled to 10 employees, and then I got up to 75, and that's only because of sales growth that took place. I think it's because, one, I really like talking to people, asking short questions, and they called me the master of making messes. Okay, making messes really meant opportunities. Okay, we can look at employee benefits. I don't do employee benefits. I have no expertise, so I hired somebody that can do that. And the same principle in investments. But the key to good people is, and why we had an outstanding culture, a culture of caring. It was extraordinary, and that's because of the people within our culture. And that's what we did do, is we didn't suffocate them. We let them be as great as they could be. And I honestly believe, because we didn't have bureaucratic suffocation, that these people exceeded any expectations as to how great they could have been. They overachieved and still had wonderful lifestyle balance. So, and the other thing is, one of my hiring practices, I do remember actually saying this. I'd say, "Welcome to the Williamson Group, and by the way, here's your 5 miles of rope. Try not to run out of it." Okay, yeah, some did. Some did. Oh man, and of course, nothing personal, men, but it was usually the men. So kudos to the women. We had very high female content, service industry. Yeah, I can't tell you how I'm in the middle of it, but the more business you get, and you get it by referrals, good service, it cascades. And therefore, you have to add more people with competencies in those fields. So, for example, in a little old Brantford, I just started and got a couple of clients in employee benefits. And then 15 years later, we're doing benefits nationally from little old Brantford. You know, it doesn't matter where you are, kids. There's a big show in town.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's incredible to go from, well, one person to 75. I mean, you kind of gloss over that, but I think a lot of advisors consider themselves getting pretty substantial if they grow to 15 or 20. So 75 is a significant size firm in financial services. At what point, or is it the case that you almost became your own employee, where in fact you decided that this is what I'm going to do? It's going to be managing relationships, and all of the business stuff I'm going to delegate, and there's going to be sort of a vice president of operations. I mean, front stage and backstage, I guess, to use a sort of a performing arts analogy. Front stage is what you were doing, but you had a backstage. How did you divorce yourself or separate yourself from running the business? I mean, at 75, that would take you all day just running a business, but let alone seeing clients. So how did you manage that?
As far back as I think after being in business for 10, 12 years, I said, okay, I got to get me a general manager, because I hate administrative duties. I'm not competent at it. Okay. So if you're not competent, don't do it. I can read a financial statement. So anything to do with accounting, get rid of it. Okay. So that's ironical. I am a chartered accountant, but I hate accounting. So anything to do with the management of the shop, and I would be just mainly I stayed focused on motivating staff and bringing in more business, because I loved it. That's why.
So your, if you will, your unique ability, or what really gave you your energy and your passion, is finding and uncovering these opportunities. You called them messes, but opportunities are opportunities, and it's what you make of them. So as you become more and more focused on sort of chief opportunity officer, with everything else being run by professionals who love to do administration and group administration or whatever, is it safe to say that that was almost an immediate payback, like in terms of revenue growth and profitability of your company? I'm talking about you as a business owner now, but understanding that finding opportunities was your job, if you will, and all the other things that had to get done were other people's jobs. Um, I think a lot of people think that growth equals complexity, I guess is where I'm going. And I think the message that you're suggesting is, or we should uncover, is as you simplified your life by being only in charge of opportunity finding, the business was able to succeed and thrive, and grow in number and in volume and in profitability, even though your day was more fun. Is that an oversimplification?
I think it makes a good sense. I keep, and sometimes I get detoured and I keep thinking of, um, I got too many little brain waves going through my tiny skull. So pull it back again. I got a choice of 8 different subjects. Where do we want to go?
I just the business model, I guess, so that as people get more successful,
okay.
their life can actually get more simple.
I think the truth is, if you stay focused on what you do and you love best, that's all. And anything you don't want to do or can't do, shop it out. And it wasn't complicated. I
Yeah.
never once. I can honestly state, going from 1 to 5 to 10, it never felt big. It was pockets of people making differences. You know, you got a few sales agitators, and not many, but mainly me, and usually would have only one cold caller on staff out of the entire gang. Okay.
Okay.
So, and that was to do employee benefits strictly, and that worked out now. And it, I think a lot depends on your philosophy. I also had another philosophy: grow or die. That's it. Grow or die. It's not complicated. So I remember back when I hired my first full-time employee benefit consultant, and he'd say, "Oh, boss, what are we going to do this year?" I said, "Well, 20%, 20% growth." Next year, he'd said, "What are we going to do this year, boss?" I'd say, "Well, 20% growth." He'd say, "Okay." And then the third year, when I said, "What are you going to do this year, boss?" He said, "Well, 20%, be nice." And he kind of roared at me and said, "We was just going to do 20%. So the answer is, from 1976 to the year 2014, over 38 years, the Williamson Group grew at a rate of 16% in sales compounded annually. So 6% is a good rate of return with your money, 16% sales growth. And we just added the people to take care of the needs that sales activity generated. And only out of the 38 years, only 3 years did we have what I would call flat years, period. And it's an attitude that you can do. So anybody that's listening, look in the mirror and say, "I can do this. I can." And if you say it enough, you're going to do it. Yeah.
Now, Paul, getting back now to market size. So Bradford's approximately 100,000 people. A firm of 70, 75 people is going to start to create a bit of profile. I mean, that's a sizable company. You start, I'm sure, getting solicited for sponsorship in community events, sports teams, and the like. Talk to us a little bit about, and we touched on your community involvement earlier, but now let's look at the firms. So we've got a large, successful, out in the community. How do they interact with the community? How does that coincidentally, or just as a byproduct, enhance the profile of the Williamson Group in the community?
Well, if you want to be able to tell what kind of culture we had, in the late 90s, we were having a bit of a food crisis in town, just like they are today. And so 3 of my clerical staff came to me and said, "Boss, we'd like to do a food drive." Okay, employee initiative. We'd like to do a food drive to help solve this problem. And so I said, "So what's your goal?" And they said 4,000 pounds. 4,000 pounds, 2 tons, not too shabby, okay? So they exceeded 4,000 pounds in their first year, and they did it all. So I said, "What's your goal this year?" He said 5,000. Well, they did 7,500.
Wow.
Okay, so they come to me a third year, and they get that, they're coming back again and again. So it was 5,000. What's your goal this year? 15,000 pounds. I said, wait a minute. I'm a nut bar. I love to double up, but what's this triple factor? Well, they'd already figured out and had got 10,000 pounds by negotiating with a farmer to buy a crop of potatoes. So they exceeded 15,000 pounds. So at 20,000 pounds, our goal for the next year was 20,000 pounds. Okay, now these are the people within the Williamson Group, or
Yep.
caring employees. So 4, 5, 15, now 20. So what did we do when we got to 20? Because you talked about community profile. I went to the city of Brantford to their annual, to one of their monthly meetings. And the Williamson Group challenged the city of Brantford to match them in food, raising 20,000 pounds. And they have a week-long food drive in Brantford, so they would get the benefit of all that they pick up. So the goal was 40,000, and in that year, the Williamson Group did 23,000 pounds by itself. The entire city brought in 19,000 pounds. But what was the good news? The good news is many hands like work. The giving in the city went up 40% in 1 year. So the next year we went at it again. I said, okay, now this is getting a little nuts. So what we'll do is we're going to get 4 other companies in town who care about the town, and we'll all do 5,000 each, which is now a goal of 25,000 pounds, which is quite a few tons. If I put it in your car, you might notice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's if you could find your car. So we went to 4 companies, got them to say yes, they do 5,000 pounds, and we would. And then we again challenged the city, saying, well, we're beefing up, let's go. So our combined goal was 50,000 pounds. And out of that, the city again bumped up significantly. And the Williamson Group employees raised 29,000 pounds out of the 52,000 pounds. So, and I don't care what you call it, whether it's from 4 to 50, and nobody broke a sweat. It's teamwork. Many hands, light work. Many hands, light work. Yeah.
Wow.
And there, I actually got a wave of emotion thinking about my amazing employees, because they made a difference. They made a difference. It's not just go to work and da-da. Like if you're a salesperson and you got staff around you, treat them like royalty. Lift them up because they'll lift you up. That's all.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, you no longer are the owner of the Williamson Group. I understand you sold your position in that.
Yes.
And that's a logical evolution. Now, first of all, I guess, was it to family members or to an outside group, and who's the lucky buyer?
The Cowan Group in Brantford, they're a bit famous. That's just one of their many ventures, and they had a fair sized practice as well, and they bought us in 2014. And what would you like me to say now?
Well, I think the only point I'll make, because the terms and such are none of anyone's business but your own, but all of this culture and goodwill and teamwork that you've built up, um, that must have been recognized by the new buyer. I mean, to what extent did they understand the quality of teamwork that they were purchasing? And have they been able to hopefully preserve it since the time they took over?
Yeah. I would say in terms of it, I think that the more the bureaucracy, it is harder to maintain a young growing culture if you're a more mature, older company. So I think they managed to perpetuate the business, and it's still thriving and carrying on in town, and that's satisfactory to me. I'm glad that they are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we've had a look at sort of the start and during and over, but if you were starting over today in today's environment, today's economy, today's communications technologies and whatever, and I guess this is advice directed to anybody with, say, fewer than 5 years of experience watching the video. Um, we saw how yours was a numbers game in many ways, and a discipline and a patience and persistence, all the P's that you listed. Is today's world so much different that we'd have to do things radically different to build the future Williamson Group? What things do we need to keep in mind that are timeless or that would be relevant to someone who looking to grow today?
Well, again, as I said, I'm a dinosaur, but you have to be right on top of your technology game. That's the new game, and you have to adapt your practice to that. The biggest thing that you need to plant in front of you is your between your ears, attitude, attitude, attitude. And I never and and I guess I'm circling back. I keep saying if you want to be a master of relationships and end up with endless referrals, practice those skills of those 3 short questions, and you'll be amazed at how much of a story you get.
Wow. Now, when you were, I guess let's look at sort of the early 2000s. Sort of, you're at your peak. You haven't sold the business yet. You're still in growth mode. Um, just from as a practitioner, everybody has their favorite corners of the insurance market, whether it's group insurance or disability or living benefits. What areas of the insurance business? You talked a lot about group insurance. Was that sort of the area that you enjoyed to work in the most, or was it the insurance side? What turned your crank?
Insurance side, employee benefits, no, not me.
Okay.
Uh, the insurance, talking to real people. I don't mean that unfairly. Is that what you call a pregnant pause?
Yes.
Okay, good. It's because I didn't answer another question. This is what I got a little game here. To answer the question, did we do well on the sale? The answer is, why did I sell? Because you always leave a party before the ashtray is full. Okay, when I'm getting up there in age of 72, and it was an opportunity, and I got what I wanted. There was no negotiation. This is what I want, and this is fair. This is why it's fair. And if you want us, that's that. So that's why it was very amicable, and
Yeah.
that worked out awfully well. I get back to, and now we're going back to what you asked me, which is
What part of the insurance business was?
talking to people turns my crank.
Yeah.
And a disability income, quite frankly, and critical illness, I think are wonderful wedges in the door. They're an easier sale than life insurance. And life insurance is a very important sale. But if somebody gets disabled, it becomes real to them. If they're unable to bring in an income, that's a scary threat, and it is imminent. and also critical illness are major issues as well. So it's nice to deliver cash on delivery at those critical moments in time instead of just getting bills. And so, and I've always had multiple sales. You know, insurance on the husband, insurance on the wife, insurance on the kids. And I have another ridiculous story. Somebody who was a client of mine at the age of 24, he was an up and coming executive at SC Johnson in town. And he phoned me probably just 5 years ago. He's over 70 now. And he was a president, CEO of a major company in Toronto, but he ran into some personal inconveniences. So out of the blue, this man I haven't heard from in 50 years phones me up to thank me for selling him that little whole life policy back 50 years ago, because it was now worth $200,000, that tiny policy in cash, and it saved his butt. So, so what the people need to know is that the value that they ultimately deliver, they don't get to see it because the person hasn't become disabled or died or retired. So all that is to come, and you're protecting those people. So I think that's very worthy. I find employee benefits are more transactional, and I love the oomph of life.
So to build on that, and I think we know the answer to this, you also got involved in the investment side of things because clearly you weren't busy enough. But that sounds more like kind of a group division. That sounds like something that you set up, got it running, but you didn't really, it didn't excite you to the extent that dealing with a business owner would.
Never, no. You get the people, and then we get enough investments, and you have a manager of the investment department, the manager of the employee benefits department, and I just shuffled it off. Yeah, you have to stay focused. Stay focused on what you love.
One thing I'm curious about, and a lot of people have that have multidisciplines, I talk about this. If you're selling enough life insurance, inevitably you're going to have a very significant claim, and it could be 5 million, 10 million, whatever. But that money has to go somewhere, has to be handled by somebody, and of course, down the hall is your investments department. Has that been a successful retention, extra service, recycling, whatever you want to call it, so that when those large death claims are paid out, that in fact, that's not the end of the relationship for you?
No, actually, we did not have many death claims, and that's why a lot of the people wanted to deal with us, because they didn't die.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. So we didn't have death claims, and therefore I can't refer them to the investment department. No, we just managed to scoop up everything that was around that people had.
Good for you. One thing we haven't touched on yet, but that is in the area of professional development, let's say, and association work. I mean, you know, we've seen the Life Underwriters Association of Canada morph into Advocates. We've seen the birth and growth of the Conference for Advanced Life Underwriting, CALU. Of course, there's $1 Million Roundtable, top of the table. To what extent is sort of those industry organizations a part of your professional life and a part of things that you would recommend to advisors going forward? And let's maybe start with the association. You know, that's kind of its own community. Has the Life Underwriters and the CLU been an important part of Paul Williamson Insurance Advisor?
The answer is unequivocally yes. You need to be why work in isolation when you have many wonderful people in these associations and CALU and the attitude. For example, in just 10 years ago at a meeting in Ottawa, I think that in CALU we had perhaps 1,000 members. 700, roughly 700 attended the annual meeting. Now that's extraordinary, extraordinary. The insurance community is extraordinary, but you got to work at being part of it. So get into the Life Underwriters Advocates, get into it, smell it and do it. I'm not gonna, I've done that. I was the president of the Chartered Accountants Association in town, and I'm president of Life Underwriters. I was on a national director of Life Underwriters. You know, either you're in or you're not. So like, yeah, get your feet in. And yeah, it's called commitment, but mainly the commitment benefits you. You're around really good people who can help elevate you, and look at how they helped me. Look at how they helped launch me. It was other people that gave me these ideas. They weren't my ideas. So if you don't see what's going on out there, how are you going to be the sharpest pencil in the land?
So as much as we pride ourselves on being lone wolves or, you know, independent entrepreneurs or what have you, there's other people living the same kinds of lives, professionally speaking, and we can learn from them and they can learn from us. I remember, and I'm going to allocate or appropriate this comment to Ben Feldman, I think it was, basically said, if I have an idea and you have an idea, we each have one idea. But if we share those ideas, we each have two ideas, and it's cost us nothing. And I thought, well, of course, like, duh.
There you go. You're doubling up.
There you are. Back to, yeah. But can you say that in many circumstances that you've actually bumped into or competed against other agents in your community with whom that you've been sharing ideas? I mean, does that ever? It's so rare. I think people have to appreciate that. Is just
That's
how.
such a good question. That's a really good question. I never ever seem to bump into competition. That just tells me that there's not enough people out there asking. You think about that. How is it possible? Like, rarely in my life, I only can think of one instance. It had to be more, but one specific one. And I'm just astounded that there's all kinds of opportunity, and know your competitors aren't ever going to bother you. I never was bothered.
Interesting. And talking about professions, you're a member of the, you know, as a chartered accountant. Just from a marketing point of view, a number of advisors, you know, like to use what they call centers of influence. So these would be accountants and lawyers, bankers, and the like. Just would you happen to say, is that been a large part of your new business where it's come through these centers of influence, or did you get direct referrals, or how?
I'm glad you're actually asking good questions. Really, it's quite astonishing.
We're just getting started, Paul.
Well, actually, I've looked at the time. Yeah, no. For example, in town, I went to the largest accounting firm, and I talked individually to each of the partners, and I'd say I'm relatively new in town. I've gone to university. I've done this or that. I've got education, and I want to show you the kind of service I'm going to be offering to your clients. So I tell them, and the way I'd like to do that is by talking with you. So in other words, that person's a prospect. I'd like to show you what I'm going to be doing with other people. We're going to run into each other, and I'd like us to be able to relate easily and comfortably, because you know the quality of the work I'm doing. Well, what the hell? Many of them became clients.
Sure.
So, wow, that worked out. And then their referrals have more power, even, because if they're a client and they're referring you again to talk to one of their clients, I'd say that was a great opportunity.
And those accounting firms, particularly if they're national in scope, they start trading ideas, or what you've been talking about becomes an idea they share with another office not too far away, and all of a sudden you're getting contacted by their colleagues across the province and ultimately across the country. So,
yeah, well, maybe if I'd stayed in business long enough, I would have experienced that.
yeah.
But maybe I was local. I got enough business, but there was the accounting firm in town is in the top 20 in Canada. It's a good size. And they had outlying offices. So yeah, I was mainly regional in my life insurance practice. I didn't invade Toronto. I left all you guys alone, thank God.
Yeah. Well, there's still in Toronto, we run into situations where prospective clients have never seen an insurance agent before. So it's
Astonishing.
it is absolutely astonishing. So you hung up your, I don't know what insurance agents hang up, I guess our licenses or whatever. In the last 10 years or so that you've been in so-called retirement, I hate to say regrets because regrets is a horrible word, but are there times when you sort of think, oh man, just for a day, I'd love to be back in the business because this is such an interesting opportunity or such an interesting business owner. I'd love to have him as a client. I mean, how are you mentally dealing with hanging up your spurs?
I didn't do well. I hated retirement. So it simply told me I hadn't prepared for it. And you made me just think now that if somebody hadn't come along with that very attractive offer, it would be interesting to see what I'd still be doing. Yeah, because I believe there's unlimited opportunity out there. The game's changed in different companies. Different sectors are becoming stronger, more profitable. There's all kinds of places out there to sell your wares.
And I may be inviting what, an avalanche here, but if one of the viewers today or at some point in the future is making notes and says, I wonder if Mr. Williamson is still available for a chat. And no, don't post your phone number or your email address or anything, but would you entertain that if someone bumped into you in the street and said, "Oh, I've been in the life insurance business for 5 years. How about you, Mr. Williamson?" "Oh, well, I retired from it." "Oh, could we have lunch?" I mean, do you feel that these people need just a little nudge, a little guidance that you probably could share with them?
Let me put it in perspective. A week ago Sunday, one of my sons is here and we ordered Kentucky Fried Chicken. It arrived and I opened the door and there was this young, clean-cut chap, Pakistan or India, clean cut as a whistle, holding my bag. He's looking at me. He pauses. There's no body language. There's nothing going on. He said, "Are you an entrepreneur?" Yeah,
Wow.
that's what he said. And so I said, "I used to be." And you know what he said? "Would you please spend 15 to 20 minutes with me so I can learn the secrets of how you did that?" And so I said, "Sure, here's my number. Give me a call." He called the next day.
Wow.
Yeah. I saw him the next day. I saw him the same day. The day he called, I saw him. He came over and spent an hour with me. And I won't go on too long. It's just that I'm still working on helping him now. Not that he needs help. This kid, it's really just impressive. I'll leave it at that. I'm glad to help. Sure. So if you want to screen it and send a couple down this way, and they can report back. Sure. Glad to help.
Paul, it's been one of the fastest hours I've ever spent, and I just have really enjoyed our conversation. I think at this point, we'll hand things over to Mr. Moderator, Lawrence Geller, but thank you very much for your time. I hope those who are going to be digesting this presentation really get some real value out of it. Thanks for your time.
A pleasure to see you again.
Thank you, Paul Bourbon, your master's class in asking questions. Paul Williamson, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, how fast can I say everything I've already said? Practice the power of 3 short questions so you can become a master of relationships. Read some books to invest in your future. Increase your activity consciously. and get involved in your community. And a Rotary Club's a good place to start. So, yeah, in other words, get involved in the association as well. And I wish you every success in our dynamic business.
Thank you, Paul. Over the years, and certainly in the past 42 interviews, it seems to me that the most successful people, the people with the longest, most enduring success, are people who give everyone else credit for their success. They're people who bring people into the fold and encourage others constantly. And you, Paul, are probably one of the best examples of that I know. When I start these webinars, I always start by saying that it's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. And you personify all three of those. You also personify clearly the fact that you can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work. And, despite your saying that you are an inconscious competent, you're probably one of the greatest conscious competents I know. So I thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom.
Well, I hope it works for somebody out there. I want 10 years from now, I want somebody smiling, say, hey, that Williamson wasn't a bad old goof after all.
Sort of like Don Pooley. Next week, we have another Master of Insurance, Mr. Joe Sheehan, with us. The following week, Laurie McNeil will be with us, again, a group insurance specialist. And then we take a break until January the 9th when Justine Zavitz will be with us, followed by Libby Wildman, Jennifer Walker, Mr. Kelly Adams, George Sigurdsson, Roger Thorpe, Sim Gakar, Mark Halpern, Blake Waddell, Don Kibblewhite, and then Lauren Curry. So we're booked now through, well, in fact, Lauren Curry is on May the 1st. We have a couple of gaps, but we're booked through the end of March. If you know of anyone who's a Master of Insurance who we should be speaking with and have not yet, please get in touch with me. And we look forward to seeing you next week for Meet the Masters of Insurance webinar with Joe Sheehan. Thank you all.